finally made it. First Baptist Church of Bridgehampton, Bridge Nation, right? Oh, it's so great to be with you guys today. I have to admit, you didn't make it easy for me, though, now that you left the building. Nevertheless, don't worry about me. I managed to navigate my way through the super highway of information and virtual space to find you, and here I am. You see, I make a lot of rounds, and it really wouldn't do to be in the wrong place, but I am certainly glad to be here with all of you, wherever you are. Oh, come on. You guys are really going to act like you don't know me? I mean, granted, for some of you, we're not as familiar, but others of you, let's face it, you know me very well, too well. Don't get brand new because we're in a virtual setting. I'm sorry. I've been known to escalate quickly. Let's start over. Listen to me rambling. I'm sorry about that. Allow me to introduce myself. I go by many names. Let's see. There's weeping, sorrow, pain, stress, struggles, bother, fear, mayhem, issues, dilemmas, problems, setbacks, mess, hot mess, difficulties, trials and tribulations, two of my personal favorites, confusion, and as of late, a worldwide pandemic. But you can call me Trouble. And you know what they say. You're either in trouble, just got out of trouble, or you're on your way back in. And so here I am, Trouble at your service. Okay, I can tell some of you still need more of a clue, so let me help you out. I'm that stack of overdue bills on your kitchen table. I'm the eviction notice that's taped right now to your door. I'm the alcohol bottle you swore you would never pick up. I'm the divorce that you didn't see coming. I am that one bad decision. I'm the person on your job who gets on your last nerve. I'm the woman you should have avoided and the man you should have never given your telephone number to. I am the unexpected diagnosis. I'm the layoff they said would never happen. I'm the heartbreak that you just can't get over. I'm the bill collector whose calls you avoid every day. I'm the upsetting thoughts that you wrestle with. I'm the worry that gives you sleepless nights. And I'm the secret shames you hope never come to light. I can see now you guys know who I am. I have your attention now. That's good. Well, since we're all acquainted, let's make the most of it, shall we? Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. The name's Trouble. Comes from the root word turbulare, which is where we get the word turbulence. And if you've ever flown in an airplane, then you know what turbulence is. Turbulence is when the airplane is flying smoothly, but suddenly begins to feel like it's driving on a bumpy road, and it rolls from side to side and bounces up and down. Well, that's exactly what I do. When you think you're going through life smoothly, I come in and shake things up a bit and make your life just a little bit more bumpy. And as the definition suggests, it's my job to shake things up a bit. I've been around for a long time. Let's see, I've been to heaven. Yep, I've been to heaven. But one day there was an uprising over the way the place was being run. We didn't know rebellion was frowned upon in that establishment. And so some of us got kicked out. Whatever. Anyway, if I had to guess, my first assignment must have been in the Garden of Eden. Ooh, I stirred up some real drama there. And well, I've been doing well ever since. There is not a person or place that I have not encountered, or better yet, has not encountered me. I even spent 40 days in the desert with Jesus once. I don't want to brag. It was sporadic and I didn't do as much damage as I had hoped. More on that later. The point is, if I can accost him, you know I won't think twice about bothering you. And let's be real. For some of you, I am a constant companion. You see, that's the thing you have to know about me. I am inevitable. In this life, you will have trouble. No matter who you are, I will get around to you eventually. Like now. It was terribly rude for me to interrupt your worship service unannounced like this, especially since you were expecting Reverend Tish, but that's what I do. I don't warn you. I don't call ahead. I simply show up. And you have to decide how to handle me. Just when you think life is going along smoothly, here comes trouble. Take, for example, this one time I was hanging with David. What am I saying? One time. David and I kicked it a lot. I spent most of his life with him, especially after he was anointed. It's the strangest thing. I can't recall too much of our history before he was anointed. But after that, seems like I followed him everywhere. Interesting. The pasture, the palace. We even hung out in a field once for a few days. But our best times, hands down, were in that cave. Ooh, we had some times in that cave. Good times. Well, this one time, after David had a string of military successes and life was going great, I mean, he was winning every battle. That's when David got pride and he got the big head and he began to think he was bigger than he was. And so he decided to take a census of the people in Israel to glorify himself. And his general, a guy named Joab, warned him not to do it, but he didn't listen. And that's when I stepped in and nudged him along a little. Oh, did I happen to mention sometimes you bring me on yourself? Yeah. Well, let me tell you, God was not happy with that at all. Yeah, that happens when you disobey God. He tends to get angry. David's not the only one. If you ever run into this guy named Jonah, ask him about Nineveh. We still get a kick out of that one. Anyway, to discipline David, God gave him a choice of 3 punishments: 3 years of famine, 3 months of being overcome by his enemies, or 3 days of pandemic. David chose the pandemic. But halfway through, in true God fashion, he lifted the pandemic and I had to move on. Funny, I don't think I'll last much longer in this one either. Anywho, this trouble that David found himself in inspired him to write Psalm 30, one of the most comforting psalms in the Bible. Sing the praises of the Lord, you faithful people. Praise his holy name, for his anger lasts only a moment, but his favor lasts a lifetime. Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning. You know, as quiet as it's kept. It's one of the things I've always liked about David was his tenacity. No matter how much I was with him, no matter how long I stuck around, he still managed to have a song in his heart. As a matter of fact, some of his greatest hits were inspired by me. Psalm 30 was just one of them. Now, don't get me wrong. I inspired them, but they were written for the glory of God. And let me be clear, David wasn't always happy with God. Every day wasn't a cakewalk. He was extremely flawed, and yet he constantly sought God in everything he did, the good, the bad, and the ugly. It was one of his most admirable qualities, and he did it more than almost any person I've ever spent any time with. Whenever David faced a trial, especially with me, he always asked to know what God's will was for his life. He wanted to know better. He wanted to be better. He wanted to do better, flawed and all. That's how he earned the distinguished honor of being a man after God's own heart. And let me tell you, when he got to doing all that singing and praising and carrying on, I had to go. I can't stand to be around all that worship. It gives me a headache. And let's face it, some of you are no American Idols. But I guess it works because it's a sweet sound to God's ear and somehow he responds. And if you want to get me out of your hair, I suggest you do the same thing. Do what David did. Because I'm not meant to stick around for long. It's true. I'm inevitable, but I'm also temporary. I think your songwriter Timothy Wright said it best: trouble don't last always. That's why David said may endure for the night and not must. Oh yeah, it's conditional. It all depends on you. That's right. How long I stay depends on you. You see, it's your attitude while I'm around that dictates how long I stay. You see, you will have trouble. You may not have a say in when I come, but you do have a say in how long I stay. I'm inevitable, but misery is a choice. David had some history with God when it came to me, which is what molded his attitude. So David never focused on what I put him through. He focused on what God brought him through. It's simple. Focus on me and I'll stay. Focus on God, and I gotta go. Although I am a bit of a ham, so your attention is greatly appreciated, because when your attention is on me, I become greater than I should and tougher to get rid of. And before you know it, I am out of control. Oh, but that David, he never let me get too far out of hand. He knew how to check me. He always had the best attitude no matter what I did to him. He didn't try to avoid me, but rather praised God during the midst of trouble. He praised God right to my face. How rude. Because he realized something. The more he glorified God, the less he worried about me. Somehow, David found it easy to turn a negative circumstances into a reason to give God praise and adoration. And again, once he started lifting up the name of the Lord, no way I could stick around. See, that's when I move out and joy moves in. Good old joy. Yeah, we've been working together for a long time. Oh, you're surprised to hear that, huh? Yeah, quiet as it's kept. We are a package deal. You don't get her without me. Why? Oh, because you'll never appreciate joy if I don't come first. Hey, listen, no offense. I know you guys don't particularly like me, and that's okay. Everybody loves joy. Joy, I get it. She lights up a room. The joy of the Lord is my strength. Make a joyful noise. Rejoice. And again, I say rejoice. I get it. Everybody loves joy. Oh, a word of caution. Never confuse joy with happiness. No, she don't like it. Because happiness is fleeting and it feels a lot like joy, but it's really just a sad imposter. Happiness is not hard to fake. Even I've been known to look like happiness from time to time, and I've been trouble all along. You see, happiness is determined by what happens, but joy is present no matter what. And I know I'm not as popular as joy is. I mean, seriously, who loves trouble? I mean, nobody prays for trouble. No one says, Lord, send me more trouble. I get it. Everybody prays for joy. No one likes me. But understand this. I am necessary. Why? Because I'm what makes joy so great. Think of it this way. Life is a party. If joy is the celebration, then I am the setup. Most people don't like to set up for the party, but everybody loves the celebration. However, it's the setup that makes the party a success. And that's how it is for you. The better your setup, the better the celebration. Going through things with me is what makes you appreciate the celebration. So I am the setup for your celebration. I'm reminded of a Twilight Zone episode I saw once about a gambler who dies and goes on to the afterlife where he continually wins and wins at the slots until he gets bored out of his mind at perpetually hitting the jackpot. You see, he was bored because there was no challenge and he no longer appreciated the win because there was no struggle. And that's how life would be for you. Without me, you'd never appreciate the win. And remember this, failure is the condiment that gives success its flavor. And don't tell her I said so, but at times, I may be even better for you than joy. Because when you spend time with me, you're tested, you're tried, but most importantly, you grow. I've watched some of the best people get stronger and better after spending a little time with me. Moses, Jacob, Job, Mary, Magdalene, the disciples, Paul, the list goes on and on. So if you can, try not to look at me as the enemy of joy, but do what that guy James said and count it all joy, because the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. Listen to me giving away all my trade secrets. No matter, most of you won't take my advice anyway, and I'll just end up sticking around longer than I should. And I must admit, some of you make me feel right at home. You make it hard for me to want to move on. Not to mention, the longer you let me stay, the more friends I invite to come along with me. And before you know it, we are having a pity party. Ooh, let's see who's on the guest list. There's Doubt, although I'm not too sure about him. There's Misery. You got to have Misery because she loves company. And then there's Worry. And then Worry always invites anxiety, but that guy makes me nervous. And then there's Depression. He's a real downer. And then after Depression, usually anger shows up. And once he gets started, we have a hard time controlling him. And then there's Guilt and Shame. They come too. Oh, but be especially careful about inviting those two, because long after all the other feelings have gone, Guilt and Shame have a tendency to hang around. But here's a tip. If you really need help getting rid of guilt and shame, just call Grace and Mercy. They'll take care of them really quick. So here it is. If you don't want all of us hanging around in your life, in your home, on your job, or even in your church, no matter what I do, no matter what I throw your way, stay focused on God. Because sometimes I can be a bit much. You don't have the power to handle me on your own, but God has all power. I can say this confidently because we've had our run-ins in the past. Every time I thought I had the upper hand, God somehow showed up and turned everything around. And I began to realize that whatever I messed up, God was there to fix it up. I remember the children of Israel. At that time, I went by the name Pharaoh. I had them right where I wanted them, water all around them and Pharaoh on their track. Out of nowhere, God stepped in, made a highway just like that. I remember these 3 Hebrew boys. At the time, I went by the name Nebuchadnezzar. I put them in a fiery furnace, turned the heat up 7 times. I was dancing a jig, confident in my victory, when suddenly I realized they weren't in there alone. God was protecting them. You see, God protects those he loves and keeps them out of trouble. There isn't any plan that I've put in place that God has not countered. That's why he said, no weapon formed against you shall prosper. God protects those he loves. Don't you see? That's why the gun didn't go off. That's why the cancer is in remission. That's why you still have a job. That's why they won't take your house. That's why everyone else went to prison except you. That's why you're sober today. That's why you still have a bright future ahead of you, because God protects his people. Don't you know that he is an ever-present help in the time of trouble? And as if God wasn't bad enough, one day he turned around and sent his son Jesus. Jesus, his only begotten son. He sent him to redeem all of you. And let me tell you, he didn't do it because you love him so much. Believe me, I know. He did it because he loved you so much. Ooh, and I tell you that Jesus, even I know there's something about the name of Jesus, because at the mere mention of his name, I begin to get nervous. I start to get the shakes and tremble. Ever since our face off in the desert, he is the one person I could never get the best of. And no matter how hard I tried, and believe me, I tried, I could never bring him down. You see, you may be no match for me, but I'm no match for Jesus. Just when I have you in a place of despair, he shows up and gives you hope. I say you're a sinner, he says you're forgiven. I say you're weak, he says my power is made perfect in weakness. I say no way, he says I am the way. I says it'll never happen, he says ask and it'll be given to you. I say it's impossible, he says with God all things are possible. I say fear, he says fear not. I close the door, he says knock and it shall be opened unto you. I say you're lost, he says I've lost none. I say you're bound, he says whom the Son sets free is free indeed. I said you're dead, he said yet shall you live. I say you are overcome, he says take heart, I have overcome the world. So take it from me, when you've got Jesus, you don't have to worry about me. I know his power, I see what he can do, and I might be trouble for you, but let me tell you something, Jesus is trouble for me, and he's been making trouble for me for a long time. I remember when I had the woman with the issue of blood. At the time, my name was Sickness. We'd been together for 12 long years. But when I heard she pushed her way through that crowd and that Jesus was walking by, I said to myself, oh no, here comes trouble. Once there was a little girl, I had her in my clutches. Back then, folks called me Mourning. She was on her deathbed, but her daddy went to find Jesus. When I saw those disciples clearing the room, all I could say was, here comes trouble. I remember blind Bartimaeus. He was sitting on the side of the road. At that time, my alias was Affliction. When I heard him cry, thou son of David, have mercy on me, my ears perked up and I couldn't believe it. Oh no, here comes trouble. Or the time the disciples were on the ship, I came in the form of a raging storm. They were all in a panic. But when I heard Jesus was coming up to deck, I just threw up my hands and said, that's a bust. Here comes trouble. When he made his triumphal entry into Jerusalem with people laying palms at his feet, while everyone else was shouting, Hosanna in the highest, I was shouting, I gotta get out of here, because here comes trouble. Ooh, but then one day it finally happened. I hooked up with his friend Judas and Pilate and the high priest and all of the others. I finally had him where I wanted him, arrested and sentenced to death on some trumped up charges. Ooh, we beat him all night long, had him hanging up on a cross all day. I had him, I tell you. They took him down and laid him in a borrowed tomb. And after 33 years, I finally had Jesus where I wanted him. Me, death, and the grave surrounding him. We managed to secure him for a couple of days when suddenly something started to happen on that third day morning. Jesus began to stir. I called death. I said, "Death, what's going on?" He said, "I don't know, but I've lost my sting." I called to the grave and he said, "I don't know what's going on, but my grip is slipping. I've lost my holding power." And before I knew it, Jesus got up with all power in his hand. And when the stone rolled away, all I could say was, "Oh no, here comes trouble." Oh my gosh, I feel Joy on her way. I got to get out of here. But I want you to know that the joy of the Lord is your strength. Focus on God. I got to go. Joy is on her way. Here comes trouble.